What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me. I'm here with the great comic creator, Mr. Jimmy Palmiotti. If you've never checked out some of my interviews on the channel real time, I'll link that in the description. But this is sort of a continuation of that. Before we get started, I'm just going to plug my own film. If you're on this channel because you're a follower because of that film, that's great. If you're on here because you saw Palmiotti, I'm going to plug my own film. It's called Christmas at Wayne Manor. It's a wonderful little production we did in Los Angeles over the summer for $40,000. It has the seal of approval of Bat in the Sun. It has 1,500 views, so we'd like to get more. So check it out if you can. But thank you for joining us. And here we are with Mr. Jimmy Palmiotti. Mr. Palmiotti, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ryan. And I want to mention to your audience, they should check out the film. I got to say, I didn't know what to expect, because when people tell me, oh, I made a film and I did this and that, it's usually on an iPhone or it doesn't look good. But I got to be honest with your the budget you mentioned, the $40,000, every single penny of it is on that screen. You got professional actors, beautiful set design, and the cinematography was great. Just a really great job all around. So if anybody out there has a couple, wants to dig in, likes Batman and likes some well done film, I say check it out, because I did and I loved it. So we can move on. We can move on, I guess, now. But I want everybody to make sure your hard work is rewarded.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about you, Mr. Palmiotti. Usually, what I've done with these things in the past is talk about people's lives and careers and sort of bring us up from their beginnings to the modern day. So I wanted to talk about for you that really started in the 90s. I think you were 30 years old when you joined Marvel in the 90s and as an inker, and then became a writer from there. But what brought you there initially?
Yeah. So initially, as a kid, of course, I grew up reading comic books. I have two older brothers and one younger brother, so comics were always in our lives. And this is way before cable, and way before all that stuff, where comic books were like our main entertainment back when I was a kid. And I went to the High School of Art and Design in New York and took cartooning there. And I wanted to do comics. But while I was there in 11th and 12th grade, I actually ghosted for a couple of comic book artists, like Dave Simons and Don Newton. I was inking a lot of people's work while I was in high school, and realizing that there's no money in that business. So I decided to change my major to advertising. And then I went to college, New York Tech College for advertising. And I got into advertising until I was around 30. And towards my last years in advertising, I started helping some friends out with a company called Eternity Comics and doing some inking for them and writing. And yeah, and then all of a sudden, I eventually I quit my job and said, okay, I want to do comics for a living. And I guess the advertising helped me figure out how to make a good living at it, because honestly, even the rates in 1990 from now aren't that different. And if you think of the world and how much things have gone up, I mean, I remember inking. I remember when I started inking was $65 a page, and then like up until a couple of years ago, it was like 125 to 150. And that's not a lot for the 30 years that followed. So even today, comics are really tough to make a living in. But I managed to I managed to do it because I love the medium first and foremost. I love storytelling, like yourself. I love to tell stories and want to entertain others. But it was a rocky road for a while, and it wasn't until later on, when I started doing creator-owned stuff with Joe Quesada, that I started to get into writing aspect of it. And I realized that it's probably a lot more comfortable doing that than the inking, even though I inked over 1,000 comics, which is a lot. But I got into the writing, and I've been loving it ever since.
Yeah, so I mean, when you say you got into writing, after 30 years old, my goodness, did you like, I mean, did you ever do writing before that? Was it just like, oh my gosh, I can write? Like,
I think in my head, of course, everybody has that. I have a million ideas in my head. But to be honest with you, I think it's when I was starting to, when I started doing the creator-owned comics, and then especially during Marvel Nights, when I was also editing, when Joe and I did Marvel Nights for Marvel, I kind of looked at scripts and I said, well, these are kind of easy to do. Like, let me try some of this. And I actually, it took me a while to get that first person to bite, but Mike Martz up at the Marvels gave me Deadpool to do, and then I did a Superboy at DC. I started picking up work. It just came natural, because I mean, even as an editor or somebody that did this for many years, I've always like kind of looked at the work and said, all right, can we move this to that and there to there, and this doesn't I feel like there's no third act here, you know. So a lot of it, the storytelling came from instincts, actually, instinctually, and I think writing, as far as having material to write and writing itself, is about living a very big life, to traveling and meeting new people and getting your heart broken and all that kind of stuff, and being able to put that into words is you know, is the skill of writing, I think. And I have to be honest with you, I've been doing it for a while, and I still feel like I'm learning. So I think that I think, which is a good thing, because I still have the energy to prove myself all the time. I'm trying to prove that I'm getting better and my work's getting better with every job I do. And I think that's probably the healthiest place to be in as a writer.
Absolutely. So, I think a lot of the when you become a writer, you became pals with Joe Quesada, which I think has been a very lucrative partnership there, obviously.
Yeah,
And you founded Event Comics in let me look at my notes here, 1994.
yeah.
Um, and you started doing things like Painkiller Jane and all that sort of stuff. So what was it? What was it about you and Joe's partnership that really proved so fruitful for you?
I think you know, we were both from New York, the New York area. He's from Queens, I was from Brooklyn, and we both loved making comics, and we also both had the attitude that they could be a lot better than they were. You know, we felt like a lot of the comics being made were like, I won't say talking down to the audience, but it definitely was. They were stuck in this kind of place, and we were looking at the art, we were looking at the way it was written, and we felt like, you know, there's so many great stories to be told with these characters. Why is it that we have to wait for Frank Miller to come to Daredevil, or, you know, there's like a key things, you know, Alan Moore on Watchmen. Like, why can't it be like that, more like that all the time? And we felt like well, the only way to do that is to put our money where our mouth is. And at that time, Image Comics formed, and we said, well, if they could do it, we can do it. And we took, like, I think we had like maybe 40, 50 grand in the bank, and we invested it all in doing the books ourselves. And it turned out pretty good. You know, it was just a matter of, I got to be honest, it was a matter of a lot of bravura and a lot of youthful stupidity, because we thought we could do anything. You know, it's that kind of thing. Like, when you're younger, you don't feel the cold when you're playing outside. And I think in some things, I was like in my 30s, and I was like, oh, I could do better than that, and I could make those books better than, you know. And it's that kind of thing now. Whether it's true or not, completely different story. And older people look at us like we're nuts. But my thing was, we were just the right kind of stupid enough to think we can do it ourselves, that we actually did it.
Mhm.
And we didn't overthink things. We just thought, well, here's the key to comics: is hire the right people for the right characters, you know, and get the right artists on the right character. And it seemed like such an obvious thing. And then you realize, when you're in the business for years, it's like the right person for the right character is less about the art style or the writing, and it's more about, for editors, getting the book out on time and getting it done. And you realize that, and I realized that on some level, is that, yeah, the reason why comics are not all great is because it's a business where they have to come out monthly, and because of that, people have to rush through things, and people have to draw quicker, and, you know, it's just it's an interesting thing to learn over the years. And I think that's why creator-owned comics are so much more viable right now for a lot of creators, because it's on their own time, you know. And although editors help, sometimes they don't help, right? Sometimes the editors comes in and says, hey, we want you to do this, this, and that, and you in your head, you have this whole story you want to do, and it gets completely crushed because the editor says, no, no, you have to put this character in, or you have to be part of a crossover. And then it becomes your writing as a chore, or writing as a gig. And
Yeah.
there is not a lot of passion in that. Now, some people bring it, but for me, it's been always been hard to kind of write a series and have somebody tell me, the editor tell me, hey, in 2 issues from now, you're doing a big crossover, so you're going to have to read these 400 books. And I'd be like, oh, God, I was just getting to the point of my story where it was, you know. So it's like I said, but I think it's just, you know, it's the right people for the right books have always been the key, I think, to
Yeah.
the best comics.
Absolutely. So you became a very successful writer. but you very rarely have written alone. You partnered with Justin Gray, and you guys have done a exorbitant amount of comic books in the past few years. How did that partnership get started?
Yeah, well, so Justin was the intern at Marvel Knights and a
Hmm.
buddy. We became friends. Obviously, he's working for me, and he would pitch me these great ideas all the time. And eventually, when I left Marvel Knights, I got offered Wildstorm offered me a couple of books to do, and we were hanging out. And for me, it's always been about how can I have the most fun doing my work. And
Hmm.
there's nothing like working with somebody as brilliant as Justin that you could bounce ideas out of and then off of, and then we come up with even better ideas. Like it's like two best buddies hanging out, going, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool if this happened?" I said, "Well, what if we did this? Oh my God, then you should do that." And that was our writing sessions for the Resistance and 21 Down, and then eventually Jonah Hex, where we were pretty much trying to top each other as far as content. And I've always liked that part of writing with somebody. Now I do write a lot of books by myself, and I have written a lot. Mostly my own creator on stuff is myself, but I do love working with somebody I like being around with. And it's like Harley Quinn, I wrote with my wife Amanda, and
Hmm.
it was sort of like a fun experiment that did really well. But it was like I would pitch an idea to her, she would bounce some stuff off at me, and then I'd write the whole thing, and then she'd go in and tweak the dialogue, and it was just a great. It was an easy thing to do, and we at that time we were doing 2 to 3 books a month, so
Yeah.
it was kind of like time wise, we were hustling like crazy, especially for Harley because we did over 100 issues of that. Um,
Hmm.
but we found a beat and we found the sound we like, and we found Harley's voice, and obviously we
Hmm.
connected somehow to the audience because that did pretty well for the character. But I like working with other people because, like I said, I think I like my ideas, but I also like I think collaboration is it's like look, I love Paul McCartney, but when he's with the Beatles, I also love that. I
Yeah.
felt like collaboration brings it challenges you a little bit, and if you're not insecure, if you're
Yeah.
insecure, collaboration's tough because you want to control everything or you don't think anybody. You really have to have an open mind to grab what's the best idea and not who
Hmm.
came up with the idea, right? You have to
Yeah.
say, there's so many times I was writing and Justin said, "How about we do this instead?" And I was like, "Oh my God, that is fit. Let's do that. That's great." And then we build off of that. And it comes with no ego, not having an ego. I don't have an ego with my writing. I when people review it and they don't like it, I always say, maybe next time you like it. What am I going to do? I can't go backwards in time. Um, but you have to have no ego to collaborate. It's not so easy. Well, look, let's talk about you for a second, Ryan. You made that film. You had to collaborate with how many people on that set,
Yeah.
right? Lighting, the writer, producer, this guy, that guy. The actors have two. They want to put their 2 cents in. The lighting guy wants to put 2 cents. And at the end of the day, you're in a group of people, though, and it's a special group, right? You're with those people, and you bond during that
Hmm.
that thing,
Yeah.
and you bond because you all have the same goal. You all want to create something fantastic,
Mhm.
and so just picture collaborating with writing is like a small version of that, you know. And let's just take it a step further. If it's me and Justin writing, and then we're working with Jordy Bernay, who we work with a lot, and all of a sudden it's the three of us and we're in it together and we're trying to create the best books we can. So it is the same kind of process you do with your films. It's you surround yourself with the right people that have a vision that's kind of close to yours. Obviously you being a director, the actor will ask you something and you'll go, that's a good point of view, but this is the reason why the actor is doing this in this scene. And it's the same thing with the comics. Like we'll write the story and then we'll say, but would Superman really think about that, or would he just fly out and act impulsively? And you have to do all that, and to have another person to bounce that off with sometimes makes some better work.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I thank you for including me in that. And you're right. It's a collaborative process and it's wonderful. I hadn't realized you had done uh just the things you listed that you've done solo. I was like I didn't really realize you had done that much work solo because I was looking at your Wikipedia page and I think we need to update that. Like
Yeah,
there's
I try to say, it's not for me to update, right? Other people update it. So I think if I try
yeah,
to update it, they yell at me or something. I don't know how Wikipedia
yeah.
works, but I think the other people's supposed to create it. There was a time when somebody was going into my Wikipedia page and taking stuff out, and I was like, and I only noticed because friends of mine would say, "Hey, they took out your Marvel Knights stuff," and I'm like, "Why?" And I'm like, "But who would do that?" You know. So yeah, Wikipedia is great, but it's also like the Wild West. It's a little, it's a lot of people just throwing in. I remember Darwin Cook told me once. He says, according to Wikipedia, I'm a magician, and I'm like, yeah, you might want to ask them to remove that.
Well, you mentioned obviously collaborating with your wonderful wife, Amanda Connor, and you guys have become so associated with, particularly with the character of Harley Quinn. I mean, you guys have really brought that character into what she's become so much more. I mean, obviously, Paul Dini created her. She became a runaway hit in the 90s, as the Joker's girlfriend. And I think it was really what you and Amanda did that sort of took her out from that sort of position and made her. I don't think there would be necessarily a Suicide Squad or a Harley Quinn TV series if it wasn't for you guys. What was it about you that brought you to the character and continues to fascinate you about that character?
The funny thing was I had no interest in Harley Quinn, and I was at a retailers meeting in Orlando, and I was with Dan DiDio, and somebody asked him, a retailer asked him, "Why don't you guys put Harley Quinn out again?" Because it was canceled. It came out in a series, and it was a great series, but it got canceled, and nobody was thinking about Harley Quinn. And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, what do you think? You maybe you and Amanda doing Harley Quinn?" And I told him, let me talk to Amanda. Let me read up on the character because the only way I knew, I actually co-wrote the Injustice game, the
Yeah.
first one, and we had Harley in that, so that's the only Harley I really knew a lot about. I knew the animated one, so when we got home, we started talking about the character, and I told him, I said, I don't really want to write a series about a girl in an abusive relationship, and I said, plus, I said, I think if we keep her in Gotham, it's like she has no chance to grow because she'll always be a Batman side character. And I said, so by the time we were done, and Amanda came up to me, came up with the idea. She says, look, no girl wears one outfit. So I want to change her outfit with every story. I'm like, that makes sense. So when we pitched it to Dan, we said, well, here's a couple of things we want to do. We want to move her out of Gotham, create her own supporting cast that actually lifts her up instead of doing all the Batman villains and I don't want to do. And I said, we're going to get her away from the Joker and we're going to find out who she is. And I said, we're going to move her back to Brooklyn because that's where Paul Dini and Bruce Timm said she was from. And I said, and then we came up with the idea of putting her in Coney Island because it made sense to who she was, that she would wind up there, and added a burlesque show and all his supporting cast. But we really just, it came out of us reading and saying, we don't know who she is, right? We don't know who this person is, other than the story that Bruce Timm and Paul Dini told. And we were like, well, we got to get to know her in order to do this series. And we told Dan DiDio, we gave him our pitch, and he said, well, it probably won't last very long, but so do whatever you want. And he said he estimated 6 to 12 issues, then it would probably be canceled. So we're like, okay, we're going to do exactly what we want. And we had her break up with the Joker in the first page. She just leaves him, and we never thought that would resonate with so many people. And then I think by the second year in, like the Harley costume Amanda design was like the #1 Halloween costume that year in the United States, and we're like, what is going on? And then we started noticing at the cons a lot of moms and daughters coming up with the comics that were reading it together. Like moms in their 20s and 30s with their young kids, and they were reading it together. And I looked at them and I said, we're hitting some audience that we didn't even know read comics before, or they're just, something about this book is hitting the fans in a way that we didn't know. Because what Amanda and I did is we tried to outdo each other when we're writing it. We tried to make it crazier each time, but we also wanted to give her compassion, and show that she's complex. Like any good guy, bad guy, it's the perspective of how she sees the world that we're interested in, not the outside looking in. And I think for a lot of years it was the outside looking in. She was the crazy character, but we felt if we made her, we did kind of did the same thing with Power Girl. We felt like if we establish who she is, where she lives, who her friends are, and what's going on in her life, the book can practically write itself. And it actually did. Like we were writing 2 to 3 a month, and we literally, I mean, we stopped after 5 years because we were like exhausted. But we still have a whole book of around 100 stories that we never did. And one day we might, if they ask, but we managed to have a good run. And again, it's just, I think, again, it goes back to the right people on the right project.
Absolutely, and it's obviously yielded incredible results as you said, and beyond the world of comics into film and television and everything, and should be very proud of that.
Thank you.
Now, you yourself have, of course, you have founded a couple of different companies, a few different companies. For instance, in 2000, was it, let me see, 2013, you founded Paper Films, which is your general company that you have on your website and
Yeah,
everything.
that we've had that since 2001, but that's Wikipedia for you. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so you've done paper films for a long time,
yeah,
and Trio Entertainment, I believe, in 2016.
yep.
What can you tell us about? Just kind of give your companies a little bit of a voice here, if you want, like
Sure,
like
I'll
what
give a good couple of
these
them.
are all
So
about.
the first one was Event Comics in '94 with Joe
Mhm.
Quesada. We put out Ash, Painkiller Jane, Kid Death and Fluffy. We put out a bunch of books there until we got side shuffled into Marvel Comics because they were under Chapter 11, and we created the label Marvel Knights for them, and we launched. We had a buddy, Kevin Smith, that owed us some favors, and we dragged them onto Daredevil, and they gave us 4 titles to do at the time. It was Punisher, Daredevil, Inhumans, and Black Panther, and we kind of rebooted all those properties, which since then have gone into TV and film. So we're happy about that.
Mhm.
We did that. I did that for a couple of years, and they came out of Chapter 11, and I decided to move on. I also co-created a company called Black Bull Comics, which was owned by Wizard Magazine, and did a couple of books there. I worked with my buddies Garth Ennis and Carlos Esquera, and we did a couple of books for them. Beautiful Killer. I worked with Phil Noto, found new Phil Noto and put in the work. And then all the while, Paper Films was basically me and Amanda and Justin Gray and a whole bunch of buddies that I worked with. And eventually that became my main company. As those companies went aside, Trio was a short-lived thing. It's actually still exists. It was a production company with me, Kristana Loken, and another partner. And it started out with good intentions, but then it became like too much time for me to pursue, and also things started changing within the partners. So I moved on. They're still in production, and they're all still friends of mine, but they're doing their thing. And then Paper Films, right now, it's like we have paperfilms.com, which is our website where we sell our books. And I do mostly Kickstarters. I do crowdfunding comics these days. Yeah, and other than I have, like, I'm doing a book for Todd McFarlane, a gunslinger book for him. But the paper film stuff is mostly my creator-owned books, which is the main focus of mine and Amanda's these days.
Mhm. Yeah, and that goes back to what you said about, sort of trying to do your own thing and not being under deadlines and trying to make it about the work and about the characters. And that sounds like you're really still living that out, which is incredible.
Yeah, it's funny because like we comic fans look back at certain runs of characters and certain teams, and
Mhm.
they have that hardcover, they have that book, and nobody ever says, that came out on time for 5 years. Nobody ever has that conversation. So for me, I've learned that a book takes as long as it's going to take, and the team doing it. And if I have 4 Kickstarters a year, I'm happy with that because I know those books are exactly the way I wanted them. And when you're working for Marvel and DC or any of the big companies, it doesn't always go that way. There's a lot of diverse hands on things, and you're not always telling the story you want, or the editor says you can't do that. That's the thing I've heard my whole career. Well, you really can't do that with the character. And I would argue out why. It doesn't change the character. Well, we don't
Mhm.
do that. Now, we had one story I remember with Harley and Joker fighting because it was in the Birds of Prey book when the movie came out. And they told us the story is too violent. And
Mhm.
I was laughing at them. I was like, can I show you the 50 instances in other comics you put out now, today, that it's much more violent. Well, we just don't want that to happen. So so they have these like imaginary rules they keep rolling out,
Yeah.
which stifle a writer from being creative. And it was a knife fight, and I was like laughing, and I said, people do get hurt in knife fights. They do get cut. I said, there's no tension if they're both fighting, and if they had
Yeah.
feathers in their hand and they were, fighting with a feather, there's really no tension there. There's a lot of giggling, probably. You know, so it's why I switched over to doing more of my own books.
Well, you're doing wonderful in that, and like I said, that brings us up to the present, and that you're doing great things, and including great, coming on here. That's a great thing. So,
Oh, it was my pleasure. It was. I give you points for persistence. It's like I want to do a lot of interviews and stuff, but I don't always have time. And you've been very flexible, so I appreciate that.
yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Just Jimmy Palmiotti to talk briefly about his career. I'm sure there's a lot more we could go over, but well, I know there is. But for our time here today, I just wanted to thank him for joining us, and thank you for joining us. And I hope to do with these with more creators. So stay tuned. Check out our films. Check out his stuff. Check out all our stuff. And until next time, we'll see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.